So today we host Lev, who is a Baroque bassoon player, but not only. He has interest in different things and helped me a lot with this interview preparation, how to talk, what we could be interesting to talk about. And what was the first thing that was very different and interesting is that Lev is really international person. He traveled a lot in Europe, but grew up in Germany, though he's American. And he's now living in Switzerland, where he studied and also worked. So it's very international, and I'm curious to know how it does influence your way of practicing music or in your artistic life.
Oh, first of all, thank you for having me. This is very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, my background definitely had me growing up with many different approaches and many different kinds of music. Because my mother is American originally, and so I grew up with her, and so I grew up listening to not only classical music but also to a lot of jazz and blues. And then also when I was a teenager, I really got into rock music, as many teenagers do, and that also has a blues influence. And I also, even though bassoon is my main instrument, I also do play guitar. I used to play in blues bands and rock bands. And so yeah, there's definitely a bit of experimentation on that part. And also both my parents actually studied music, but they studied in the States and not in Europe. So I was raised also by people who, while they are classical musicians, they also learned a different approach than the environment I grew up in.
And that's actually another question that we can already jump to. Is like you talk about this different influence of music, like with the guitar and with pop music, rock music, that I wanted to know, like how would you describe this difference? What is specific to this approach of music?
Well, I would say the biggest difference is the way you learn it, because classical music, I would say, is taught generally in a much more methodical way.
Okay.
Where you're taught how to read notes, you're basically taught how to play an instrument almost before you even pick it up. In a way, it seems like that in a lot of cases.
We kind of think, oh wait, first we need to understand, and then we can.
And then we learn to play and
experience it.
Exactly. Whereas, at least in my experience, when I started learning from an electric guitar teacher, and that was years after I started playing bassoon. I had played bassoon for 8 years before I ever picked up a guitar.
Okay.
And then my guitar teacher, one of them was in a rock band, and it was more like, yeah, sure, you can learn theory, not that you shouldn't learn it, but it was more like, first you start to play and then you start to understand the music. And it was more like, first build your confidence as a player, and they also focus a lot more on showmanship, whereas in classical music, sometimes they do, but people in the classical world, at least in my experience, don't talk as much about how you present yourself physically to an audience, or how you carry yourself across.
That's interesting. Like the way you describe, it wasn't planned, but it sounds like the way we learn pedagogy. It's like you teach, and then question comes up. Yeah. And then someone can give you an advice from experience. It's like, is it a bit that way?
Kind of, yeah. I would say the main thing is in the classical world, it's a lot more, it's more sophisticated in a lot of ways, because you focus a lot more on learning the actual history and theory of the music, whereas, and then you develop instincts for the music based on that.
But like America, sorry, it wasn't planned, you let me know?
It's okay.
Like I've heard that in America there is still a very huge music history. Like when we think about some style, we automatically think about America. And do you think, like, is it part of the process of learning because people know it already, or like you're aware of this history, how to say that, references or culture, or it's more like you take the instrument and then comes advices, comes lines?
I would say that I guess part of the reason for this difference is that in Europe, this actually is the place where this music was born. Okay. So you know, you kind of, I guess if you grow up here, especially if you grow up learning how to play music, it automatically lends itself to learning about the history in a way that maybe it doesn't as much in America, because then when you learn it in America, you're learning about music that was born on the other side of the world. Whereas here, you learn about music that was born here, like in the place where you were born or where you live.
Yeah, maybe that's automatically becomes okay. Then it's first an experience music.
Yes. And also here it's like,
but it's cool.
Yeah, it's a bit more of a personal thing here because it's like if you're European, this music is your culture.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're American, you're a bit removed from it in a way.
Okay, wow. And do you feel like, it wasn't planned at all, but do you feel like when you play the music there, like you kind of need this relating to a place, or it's just so natural that it's not every culture is coming from this place? Because like as a European, I would automatically, maybe it's because of this way of learning, that I would automatically need to know where does it come from, what is the origin of the, you know?
Yeah, well, my personal preference, and I'm not saying that one approach is better than another, but for my personal taste, my ideal approach when I'm learning a new piece of music is I like to first learn it and play it and think, what do I like about it musically? And then I'll learn about the culture behind it, or when it was written, and then after a while, when you learn about history, then you hear, oh, this piece was written by this composer, and then you automatically think, oh, so by this composer, that means this period, this style, this, yeah, but my approach when I was learning as a child was always, I would first fall in love with the music itself, and then I would naturally just want to learn the history.
Yeah, it's more logical actually. Like as a child, you first, like sometimes they have flash of like a work just because they like it, and then they like it forever. And I think it's this kind of, well, that wasn't planned, but that was very interesting.
But that's one thing actually, also, especially because when I was a kid, I didn't only play music, like, because I was also very academic. I went to a very academic school, even though I don't look like it, but I did. But no, it's fine. I was joking, but,
no,
but it's true.
I was just referring to your joke, and now
it's okay, we can cut this out.
Yeah, but, let's see.
Yeah, but yeah, because I don't come from only a musical background because of that, when I first studied at a music school, I felt a little embarrassed that I didn't know as much as other students did about theory and history, and because some people who studied at the place where I started, they had been going to, you know, an art school since they were like 8 years old, and they knew, you know, everything about music theory like the back of their hand already, and I was beginning to learn it then, a lot of it.
Yeah, maybe you became aware of the difference at that time, like the difference of approach music, maybe.
That, and also because before I officially started studying at a music school, I had also started learning guitar, and as I said before, when you play like pop and rock and blues music, it's a different approach theoretically too.
Yeah,
you see that very differently, and so I not only hadn't learned everything about theory, I had learned different approaches, and so I was so confused.
Oh yes, yeah. And as a child, you're not so many aware about, oh, it could be something else, and
yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And some people I knew also had come from very strict families, and it was so they knew like that.
Let's break that way of that's not.
I felt like, oh my god, I'm like a baby now.
But I love it. I would keep some. Well, we're together.
We decided we keep.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So you're also a comedian?
Yes, I'm
very.
Also. I have many.
A different word.
I have many interests.
Yeah, but that's really one of the most catchy ones, comedian. And what do you like the most about it? Like.
Well, first of all, I'm generally quite an extroverted person, so I like to talk to people, and I like meeting all kinds of people, and I've always been a big fan of comedy. I guess part of it is also having an American family. Comedy is a big part of American culture.
Yes, yeah.
It's a big part of American entertainment, and I've always loved it. I had always kind of wanted to do it my whole life, but you know, where I grew up in Germany, I kind of didn't know anyone who did comedy, And so I didn't know.
Yes.
I didn't know, like, if you want to try to do it, who do you talk to about it? I didn't know anyone I could talk to, so I thought it was just not possible. Especially since I didn't even know how to do it, so I couldn't even try to do it myself. And then soon after I moved to Basel, I met some people who were doing comedy, and they were trying to kind of establish a Swiss comedy scene. And then they told me they do some, what they call open mics, which is where just anyone can go on stage and just try to do comedy for the first time. And I started doing that, and next thing you knew, that was like a huge thing, and it became a bigger and bigger part of my life.
Yeah, so it was always, it's like, because from my side it looks like, and boom, comedian. But actually, and actually it does make sense with all this childhood you describe and the desire for it. And do you think that, as you say, that you like to, that you're an extroverted person, do you like, is it one of the aspects you really like, is like that you can talk about everything you would like to talk about in a way? Yeah,
I mean, I feel like sometimes with the music, whether I'm playing classical or when I used to play other kinds of music, I sometimes felt it was a bit limited because you're just playing what you're playing and that's it. But with comedy, you can even decide spontaneously before a show, actually today I'll talk about this. And you can talk about whatever you want as long as it's funny, basically. And so I felt like I had a bit of a different kind of creative freedom with it. And yeah, also, as you said, the extroverted part of myself was a big thing that I felt like I needed an outlet for it. And because I felt that sometimes, as much as I love the music world, it can be a little bit isolating sometimes.
Yeah.
Because like usually musicians kind of, especially classical musicians, a lot of them only know other musicians, right? Yes. Yes. And I kind of wanted to get to know more kinds of people, and then I ended up getting to know comedians who kind of seem to know everybody. Yeah. And I felt like I want to have a bit of that. Yeah. Actually, yeah, when we came once to your show, we were surprised how the public acts differently. We were talking about it before, yes. But like as a musician, we just are respectful. We're listening to until the end, and then a clap if it was good. But when we came to your show, like the public were very present and we're very ready. I don't know how to say that, more open and ready to react, to interact as well. Yeah, like, well, it's really a big part of it. Yeah, it's a different environment. It's less formal because, as you said, if you go to a concert to watch an orchestra, you're kind of just sitting there, you know, being silent to listen to the music, and then you only clap at the end. But with comedy, it's interactive, and the crowd is almost like a participant at the show. Yes, yeah, that's this part, and it's making more social aspect, I would say. You know, it was funny actually because a few months ago I did my solo show. You went to that too, actually. Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but I wrote it in the group chat where you and a bunch of other musician friends of mine are in the group. Yes. And I told them about it just because I wanted more people to come to my show. And yeah, there were. And I was so happy about that. Thanks for coming, by the way. Really. But I wrote a message in the group and saying like, hey, just so you know, this is very different than a music concert, so please don't be quiet, don't behave, just participate, make noise, don't worry. Yeah. Because I was nervous that you guys would feel like really out of place. But that's really good you did that, and also the host, I don't know what Laura, yeah. Yeah, she took like the time, we were talking about it before, but like she took 10 minutes to explain the show. But it's made really the difference. I would have also been quiet and like, good job. But I wouldn't have, you know. But that's what we have to. But that's a big thing, especially in Europe, where comedy isn't as big a part of the culture as it is in other places, like especially America. Yeah. Like in America, you don't have to explain. People generally know what stand-up comedy is, and they've been to or seen a lot of shows before. But here, people kind of need to be reminded that like this isn't a lecture or this isn't you know, a speech. This is like you're supposed to kind of express and not have like the Swiss reaction of y'all, this is funny. You know, yeah, I would have the same. I was like, good. Yeah. And it's a different idea. Yeah. Yeah, but that's And last question. I think we have seen everything. Yeah. Why did you choose this violin sonata from Leclair? Yeah, I know you're not a violinist, by the way. No. No, it's I thought of that piece when you asked me what I would like to play, just because shortly before I left the Schola in Basel, I had been at a project somewhere, and in between rehearsals, when we had like a little break, I spoke with one of the violin students who I really kind of, I don't know, we just had a nice connection. And she showed me some of the pieces that she was working on, and it was one of them. And we just, I don't know, after just talking about it, we ended up playing it when we had like a 20-minute break in between.
Oh, so very spontaneous.
Yeah, it was completely spontaneous, and I just remember thinking I really liked the piece, but she was a student from Paris, and I live here, so it was like we couldn't really do more than just that, and I always wanted to play that piece kind of with someone.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it possible to play that on a recorder? And then I just asked you.
I think yes. Like, yeah, like now we go to technical stuff, but I have a flute in D major, and I think violin is mostly good in D major. Maybe I'm saying shit, but
I don't know.
usually when I see a violin play piece, I would just take this recorder in D.
Okay.
Boom! Thank you very much. Thank you for advices. That was perfect for the first video, like because you're used to this kind of there's more talking, because recorder I cannot talk with the same.
Right.
So it's pleasure, but yeah, we did the several takes because it's just so new for me, but it's big pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me. you.